Alrighty, folks. If you're there on the chat, I'll get you to send me a message to let me know if you can hear me. We do have an aircon running in the background here just to keep the room cool, folks who are trickling in at the moment. But if you can hear me, just drop a message in the chat to make sure. It looks like the microphone's working, but I just want to make sure. So, all right.
Where do you want to sit?
Okay. Happy days. Working? I don't know, but let me try that. Oh, I can send you the link if you want. Oh, yeah, Simon's actually messaging me now. Oh, cool. Thanks, Simon. Too easy. Alrighty. All right, we've just got a few folks trickling in at the moment. You can see our audience popping in. Everyone joining on the live stream.
You better stop talking. There's all coming in.
Oh, Jesus. All right. We've only just turned it on, so look out. Like they say, the phases coming. All right. For everyone watching, I apologise for the glare, but that will disappear in about 5 minutes, I reckon. So, can folks also see the screen, or can you just see me? I'm hoping you can see the screen. So, actually, I'll do a share screen. That's what I need to do. Cool. Now you can just see now you can just see a mini me in the corner, and you can see what's on the screen. So, any more?
Damien, what are you doing?
Coming in? Anyone else? No? Fuck it. This is it. Anyone else can come in late. So, hi everyone. I think I know most of you, but we are going to do a little bit of an introduction a little bit later on. Tonight is part of the Habitat's Masterclass workshops. We run them on Darren runs them on a reasonably regular basis. There was a booster workshop a couple of months back. This is a cave exploration one. Daz, what's the next one on the workshop?
I think we've got one on twin cylinder rigging is coming up.
Twin cylinder rigging
is coming up, and dry homemade.
So there's a mountain of workshops coming up. The whole idea behind the masterclass is not necessarily to teach people. I want this to be a chat. I'm particularly excited. We've got basic cavers here. We've got folks from all different, we've got very experienced instructors here. We've got folks from all different backgrounds. It's very much a community event, very much about getting people together to chat about stuff. So if I'm rabbiting on here and you've got questions, throw them out. I'll repeat them for the folks who are watching on live stream, and we'll go through it. It's supposed to be relatively interactive. So I will say tonight is a bit of a dry run for me. I'm presenting alongside Will Passos, one of my fellow Soggy Wombats, next week at Oztech. The presentation will not look like this, but this is Josh's spin on our joint presentation. So something for me to get a bit of a dry run and also share with you guys something that we found, which is pretty exciting. So I know we've got our Kiwis tuning in from Global Dive as well. Some of these guys may not be familiar with what a wombat actually is. So for our international folks, this is a wombat. They are a nocturnal digging animal. They can hit 25 miles an hour. They have armored butt cheeks. They poop squares, cubes for some bizarre reason. Yep, look it up. It's bizarre. I spent 5 weeks on Flinders Island, and these guys basically just run the place, and I can guarantee you they're going to do more damage to your car than your car is going to do to them. They're pretty full-on little beasts. For folks who might not have passed anatomy, some easy details on how to remember a wombat as well. Feetsies, getaway sticks, wombats, again armoured down here. So, and obviously not opposed to mud, which is kind of where the Soggy Wombats come in. So why the Soggy Wombats? At the end of the day, there's 8 of us in the team who've all got different skills. We've all got different areas of interest. A lot of those cross over. All of us love caves, but we all have different areas that we're specialists in. We also kind of follow 5, in the same way you follow the 5 golden rules, we have the 5 guiding T's. So we use whatever tools we've got to try and push a little bit further. We change our technique to try and achieve different things in a safe manner. That may not be what, say, our instructor might have taught us, but we modify techniques to try and do things a little bit differently. We use technology to document what we do. So very heavy on the use of videos, GoPros, 360 cameras, as we'll talk about a little bit later. We're big fans of sharing that data. So it's not just for us to hang on to it, it's also about then sharing it. And we are very open about all of that, but we don't necessarily trust people outside the team. We trust the team. So share and be very transparent, but at the same time, we don't necessarily work with folks when working on projects that are outside of the team. So the 8 Soggy Wombats, a bit like the 7 Dwarves, we've all got nicknames as well. Grumpy, Sleepy, Chatty, Weirdo, Churrasco, Sunshine, Salty, and we've got a mystery wombat as well, who likes to keep his identity a little bit quieter. For a long time we had Corey, Salty, as one of our mystery wombats as well, but he's decided to come out and acknowledge and admit that he does hang out with us. I started the Soggy Wombats about 3 or 4 years ago now, as a way to, I suppose, work together as part of a team and try and bring a bunch of really good people that I knew together to go and do really cool things. I am way too comfortable underwater in the dark. I hate dry caving. I'm legitimately claustrophobic. I've had full-blown panic attacks in dry caves. Faz has been there to watch one of them. I'm not a fan, but I will do it to get to water. So I'm happy to drag stuff, but I hate dry caves. I do tend to trash my gear. That said, none of it's failed so far. Corey and I were talking about before this started. I'm still using the same rig, the same regulator, not the same regulators, but a lot of the same hoses that I was using when I did basic cave 6 years ago now. So I do tend to hammer my gear, but it's reliable and it works. I've been diving a long time. I did my open water when I was 12, a week after I turned 12. I had already been exposed to scuba diving for quite some time, for quite a few years before that. I come from a family that does a lot of scuba diving. My dad was an ex-military diver. I've been diving a really long time. It's not what led me to caves though. So I've been diving, I've worked as a Navy diver, I've been doing all sorts of different things underwater. There had always been work. What actually led me to caves was Mars. So in 2012, 2013, I signed up for a one-way mission to Mars as part of the Mars One project. I got shortlisted as one of the 100 candidates for that particular project globally, and I was very much involved in site selection, so picking the sites that we would actually potentially land in, and keeping people safe in those areas. And one of the big areas that we really looked at was studying different parts of Mars and just significant amounts of water in the actual regolith itself. But the other thing we really looked at, weirdly enough, specifically looking at putting people inside habitats that are built inside caves. And so as part of this whole Mars project, I was doing a lot of different things. Mars One really took it in 2020. I'd also been asking a lot of questions about what I was doing, why I was involved with it, what I was getting out of it, and if I had 10 years left on Earth before I was potentially leaving the planet, what I would want to do. And the one big thing that came up, I wanted to write books. So I wrote a book about what I would do with my last 10 years on Earth. And the biggest thing that came out of it was learning to cave dive. I've been diving for 3/4 of my life at that stage, but I'd never learned to cave dive. And so decided to come over here, did a course, met a couple of interesting characters. So me, obviously on the left, this is Will Passos, who was on my basic cave course, and we'll introduce Matty Aisbert, who's just out of screen there at the top as well. So 4 of the 8 wombats were on the same basic cave course together. Sorry, 3. We'll get to the 4th one in a little bit, but 3 of us were on the same basic cave course together. So that's how a lot of us met. I didn't pair up with Will until much later. I actually paired up with Matty. Matty's an ex-serviceman like me. He had just done his PADI instructor's course not long before. Matt has thrown himself really into rebreathers. That's his big thing. He's by far the most experienced rebreather diver on the team. Matt is also the break for me, especially when I was first cave rated. He was the one who would turn around and be the voice of reason and go, hey, maybe let's not do this crazy stupid thing over here because it's literally our third dive out of the course. Yeah, he would keep me in check, and it was a good thing to have in place, to have someone who would turn around and go, hey, maybe don't push as hard or as fast as you are. He would still follow him into some pretty awful places, but when things were getting a little bit silly or we were starting to maybe start bending some of those 5 golden rules, Matt would be the one who would step in and go, hey, let's not do this. Let's not do 2 decompression dives in a day. Let's not, push things too far. So really, really handy guy. We did a lot of diving in Allendale together. It was easy to book. It was easy to go and get the key for it. It was free, and so we did the vast majority of our cave hours together in Allendale. Sorry. So this is us doing a date at the Dale, as we used to call it. There's not a lot for folks who've dived in Allendale. There's not a lot there, but we managed to make our time up. We played around. We had a lot of fun. So one of the other sites that Matt and I very early went on to was Engelbrecht's. And before we went and dived Engelbrecht's in late 2019, went and spoke to an advanced cave diver that we knew, had a chat to him and went, hey, what should we expect? And he's like, it's a very, very short dive. There's maybe 30 meters before you pop back up into an air chamber. But if you go all the way across to the other side of the air chamber, there's a bit of water that you could jump into if you wanted to. Matt and I, being overly enthusiastic, went straight to the water on the other side. For folks who haven't seen Engelbrecht or aren't familiar with it, this is a bit of a map that I drew up a couple of years back now. So on the top here, we've got an entrance doorling. There's about 3 flights of stairs that you need to get down to. There's a bit of a video that will show all of this in a little bit. An entrance pool to get started. There's a bit of line that runs through to the middle of this tunnel. And again, this is very short. If you're a really serious freediver, honestly, you could probably freedive through it. Like, it is not a big distance that we're talking about. You do have to tie in a jump spool to go from the end of that orange line up to where the water is in the main chamber. And that's it. Like, if you know what you're doing and you tie on, you could probably be through it in less than 5 minutes. It's not a big deal. There is another area that you can go around to one side. There's a little bit of line that runs through that as well. But honestly, not a big dive. But down here is the section of water that Chris Dawson mentioned to Matt and I. And so Matt and I went through, had a bit of a look, and went, let's go and have a look at this other section of water down in the bottom there. Matt and I jumped in, swam around. I shined the light up to the roof and realised there was a reflection up there of air. And it's not where we came in. So I looked up and went, what the hell was that? Popped my head up, found that there was a pile. There's a bit of dry cave back there. So naturally, first thing we did, dropped our cylinders, went straight around, squeezed through the dry cave. We found another section. At this stage, as cave-rated divers, we're technically breaking the rules because we've gone and entered a new sump. We've gone through and done a bunch of different things, but we were adventurous. And we found this. And this is a little muddy room at the back there. We weren't sure what was going on, but that water's clear. Crystal clear water, and we're very curious about it. I happened to have a camera with me at the time because I wanted to get a few photos of what this cave looked like. We carried all our gear 3 flights of stairs down, so I wanted to make sure we actually captured the experience. Took this photo, immediately decided I was going to go through it. So that's the little crevice at the top. That section there is, probably 10 centimetres between the top of the water and the top of the crevice. But there was just enough to be able to squeeze through. So pop the regulator in, squeeze through, popped out, opens up even further. I was like, cool, okay, there's something very cool going on here. Bumped along on the bottom of the screen here through the water. And as it turned out, there's quite a deep pool that dropped away into this large section. And Matt and I went, holy crap, like, this is amazing. What have we found? Like, we found this whole new thing. This isn't on the maps anywhere. We don't know what this is all about. Awesome. We came back, we had another quick look, and I took a few more photos along the same lines as this. Didn't really know what we were doing, but hey, we're exploring. No one we spoke to knew about this thing, so we sort of went, cool, maybe we're onto something here. And then COVID happened. So all this was happening in around January, February 2020. I took this photo in like early February 2020. And then I got stuck over in Victoria throughout all of 2020. Didn't get back until the end of that year. Didn't get back into Engelbrecht until about March or April of 2021. And at that point, wasn't ready to go and explore this again. But I stopped on this picture for a reason, because this little rock here, right in the middle, we looked at it at the time and went, cool, it's just a rock. There's nothing else here. Turned out that that rock is actually hiding quite a substantial tunnel that drops straight down to 14 meters that leads onto 400 plus meters of cave. So that's why I always say, like, when we talk about exploring new things, we like to get multiple eyes on things, because people see things from different perspectives. This is a case of one person taking one photo and going, there's nothing there. Turns out there was a lot more. As I said, COVID put a dampener on a lot of things, but it did give me a chance to go through all of the old guidelines that have been published. And Ian Lewis had published an article in about 2010 talking about fracture lines and talking about the geology of how a lot of these caves form. He wrote a specific section on Engelbrecht. He specifically talked about Engelbrecht's west. Now, we were diving Engelbrecht's east, the cave rated dive at the time. He was talking about west, and he was predicting that there would be a major collapse, a major room where the intersection of a lot of these lines formed. Again, talking about Engelbrecht's west, we were much more interested in Engelbrecht's east, down in the corner here. So I managed to get a decent map that Ian had put together, and studying kind of the lines that he was talking about from these fracture lines, I started to realise that we actually had fracture lines all through Engelbrecht. Things we noticed was this intersection that we've got up the top is where we enter. That's the entrance pool up top there, close to the A. We've got an intersection there, and then we've got this cross fracture. It's actually what we're diving through. And that realization that, you know, these lines are intersecting that join the fractures together and potentially have dives through. We were excited about that. What we were really excited about was the intersection of all these lines down the bottom here, which is exactly where we had been in 2019 and got very excited about at the time. So got very excited about that. Finally got back in there. I didn't get back in there with Matt. Matt was actually stuck down in Antarctica. He'd gone and taken a job down there, and he got stuck as a result of COVID for 18 months. So I paired up with someone else, went in there, had a look, went back to this same thing. At this point, the water level had dropped considerably. It was almost dry. It wasn't like this. I also picked up a MNemo during COVID as well. For folks who aren't familiar with the MNemos, they're basically a survey tool. So this is a little magic black box you clip onto the line. It's got a compass, a depth sensor, and you basically push a button that takes a reading of where it's facing, run it along the line, it measures the length of the line, push the button again, it takes another heading, and then you move it, clip it on the line again, and you can start to form these stick maps as a result. Start to get a sense of where the cave's actually going. So between studying the geology and getting hold of the MNemo, I was super excited to get back into Engelbrecht. We also added 2 members of the team. We knew we were going to need more support. We knew we were onto something. So we added Chatty and Weirdo Wombats. They are both absolute liabilities, but we adore them. Martin and Chloe joined the team. So realistically, Chloe is an incredibly experienced ICU nurse. She's got experience in ED as well, has explosion experience to expeditionary medicine, all sorts of fun stuff. She does refer to her patients as veggie farming. It's pretty unpleasant, but that's what she does. She's very good at what she does. Martin, and she's much more confident at dry caving than I am. She loves it. I hate it, but she will love it. So Martin is very hard to find photos of him with clothes on. He's also an incredibly experienced programmer. So he's been programming for more than 40 years. Very, very talented dude. Martin and I tended to push a lot of these new caves that we were going into. Yeah, very cool dude. Very, very good at what he did. I talk specifically about Martin because Martin took the ridiculous number of Google Earth marks that I had for caves in the area, and he turned it into CaveDB. So for folks who aren't familiar with CaveDB, It's an app that allows you to be able to track caves. You can put in your own updates, you can add points, you can do all sorts of different things. We've now got caves from all around the world added into CaveDB. There's survey data in there, there's videos, there's all sorts of things. So if you haven't checked out CaveDB, strongly recommend having a look at that. Very handy tools like, hey, you go out and check a cave out in the middle of a forest somewhere. Before you go, you leave a mark for where your car is in the app so that you can navigate back to your car afterwards. Being able to use an internal compass to be able to navigate out to whatever mark you've chosen. Very, very cool piece of equipment. CaveDB and the MNemo was the perfect opportunity for me to go through and resurvey Tank Cave. I'll talk about the MNemo a little bit later on in more detail, but Tank is very handy because it's the same depth. You don't have huge changes in depth. Using the MNemo, it works fantastically when you're not going up through chimneys and you've got long lengths of line to measure. If it's really short, it starts getting really complicated. So big, long, open tunnels in Tank, perfect place to practice the techniques for using the MNemo to produce that. So for folks who aren't familiar with this, this star that we've got here on the right-hand side is the main entrance. It's the CDAA-owned entrance. And then over here, we've got Fossil Cave and the connection and all those sort of things up in the top left-hand corner there as well. So lots of practice, lots of things. Yeah, going through and resurveying Tank gave a lot of experience for both Martin and myself and a few other folks that joined us as well to really get a sense of where do these caves actually go and get a sense of how things are connected. Understanding and closing the loop on a lot of these caves helps you understand where you would want to go and look next. So I say all of that because we did a survey, we got a sense of where things were going, and as a result, when we went back into Engelbrecht, the basic cave divers who haven't seen Engelbrecht before, 2 blocks away, it's just here. Part of the cave actually runs out underneath the highway going underneath us here as well. That's Engelbrecht West. The video you're watching at the moment is obviously me holding it, Chloe behind me, and then our team videographer, Simon Backman. So I think Simon's tuned in and watching at the moment from Queensland, trying to make sure the power stays on while cyclone hits. But Simon is really the brains behind all of the videography that we do. Putting these shots together, framing them, editing them. We spent so long in this cave. Everyone was over it. But Simon did an amazing job putting it all together. So I think we've got a little bit of buffering here, just because there's too much stuff going on at once. That's probably Chloe behind me in the lights, looking at the surface. That's the end of the light. And up at the right here is the surface. That's the same. Like most cave surface up in the main chamber. The chamber itself is quite tall, quite large, and quite a substantial rock pile to try and navigate. Let's speed a little bit of this up, just because I don't want to inflict endless videos on you guys. But if we scroll through here, short version is you crawl across a massive rock pile, try not to break an ankle. That's not going to play the game. Squeeze through a rabbit hole. This is the same thing that was in the water. It's dry now. I've heard that, yeah. So I've heard that it's dropped considerably. We have seen it drop. Originally, this was a dive. Like I said, you can see that tiny notch. And on the other side of that, there's that rock. I think that was hiding it. And directly behind it, just drops away. So, again, you gain experience the more time you spend before you dive these places, the more you start to see different people's different perspectives. If I had been a metre to the right and looked back, sorry, a metre to the left and looked to the right, I would have seen behind this. But we didn't. So, and it took another 2 years before we were still about this. So we're at 14 metres at the moment. This is about maybe a metre between the roof and ceiling. That's play. Play. And then we basically do a hard left-hand turn up into 14 metres back up to about 10 here. This enormous room. We went through and obviously having minor tech issues, but that's all right. There we go. So on the right-hand side here, we've got that mud room, the rabbit hole. We've jumped into the pool of tears down the caterpillar, and then we've turned up, and where the video cuts out is the back end of the garden. That room's, well, 25, 30 metres long. There's the western branch that goes off. More interesting for us, the western branch, that's nice. It's kind of running parallel to Engelbrecht's west. Far more interesting was finding the southern branch. The only issue with the southern branch is it kind of required us changing our gear a little bit. And you've got massive amounts of rope. I've got 2 7-litre cylinders behind me as well, and I'm in a wetsuit. People are like, what the hell are you doing? But it was so I could do this. So down on that southern branch is quite complicated. So if you're wondering if I have to exhale to get through it, yes. Not right. Don't have to stop the cylinder at the moment, and it is really will wear away. Other people go and dive it, but it's pretty up. That held us back for quite some time being able to go further, but once we did, it's not like in these YouTube videos. We found another 200 metres cave. So we're not sure there's much more to Engelbrecht. There might be. We'll always encourage other people to go and push further, but we've kind of reached a point now where we think that might be it. So Engelbrecht East originally started like that, and once we were done with it a few months later, we did that. Now, this is cool, and drawing this up by hand was a lot of work, but it was an interesting experience, but it was way too hard doing stuff like this. I'm much more about the survey. I'm much more interested in surveying the line, seeing where the cave roughly is going, because it then starts to tell me things like how far are we from the cave gardens? And is the cave heading towards the cave gardens? Which, based on the fracture lines, it is. No one's found a connection. There's still a lot of work to do. You're still 2 kilometres away. But we know that the fracture lines head that way. So the team isn't pushing Engelbrecht East anymore. But if someone else wanted to go in there and push further and find stuff that we haven't found, fully supported. We would love to see something like that. And yeah, that would be the dream, to be able to do a dive from the side of a highway into the centre of town. Would be pretty awesome. So I got to share a lot of this along with Simon, Will, and Chloe at Oztech in 2022, was it? I think 2022. It's a few years ago now. It was awesome. We had kind of been asked not to name the cave, but every cave diver was there, knew exactly where we'd been, and we got to share it. We also moved on from Engelbrecht pretty quickly because we'd already started to find something new and very interesting in Iddlebiddy. So Iddlebiddy is an advanced cave for folks that don't know. And this is kind of where Will really came in. So Iddlebiddy, I think, discovered in the early 80s. It's out in the middle of the forest. It's literally a hole, and you drop about 3-4 metres down into that hole to then access the water. Massive railway tunnel running through the middle of it. I think you named it, didn't you? Did I hear that right? Yeah, look at you. No, you didn't name it. Okay. I thought you had anyway. Railway tunnel, it's about 200 metres long. Gorgeous, absolutely stunning dive. Now, at the time, our Churrasco Wombat, Will, is an amazing photographer. We take the piss out of him for him trying to call himself Silent Shutter. He is a carnivorous Brazilian wombat, and that we're never going to call him anything but. But very, very talented diver, but also an extraordinary photographer. And Will had been starting to look at how do we photograph these caves in a different way so we can get a sense of what shape they take. As I said, exceedingly talented photographer, both above the surface and also underwater. So this is Ela Elap. It's been closed for a few years now, but that's Matty Aisbert on his rebreather. It's a very spooky, weird, unusual dive, and Will managed to capture that perfectly with this photo. So he also managed to make Grubby Wombats look halfway decent when they're not covered in silt as well. So Will started playing around with photogrammetry, and he was doing some of it via a drone. So this is Fossil Cave, captured from a drone above. This is also Fossil Cave, captured underwater using a photogrammetry rig, where he would have a series of GoPros set up that would take photos, and those photos would then be matched by a computer later on to show the actual shape of the cave itself. Doing it in somewhere like Fossil is not that hard. There's a fair bit of natural light, and so it captures it reasonably well. The challenge is lighting the cave to be able to capture the shape, which brought us back to Iddlebiddy. Iddlebiddy was going to be the first proper cave. No cabin zone, no background lighting or anything like that. It's a dark hole. There's no light down there except the light that you carry. So trying to find a rig that would actually work properly to do this was really challenging. But Will succeeded and produced this. It's going to struggle with buffering a little bit, unfortunately. Give it a second. But especially for trying to explain to people what these caves feel like, it helps. The colours are a little bit off. There's floating rocks. There's a few bits and pieces. But in trying to translate and trying to explain, hey, this is a railway tunnel cave, this is the sort of thing that we're talking about. So it's quite large. There's no sense of scale, unfortunately. So some of the models that he's done later, he's put divers in so you can see how big it is. But this was Will's first try at trying to capture the shape of these caves. It also meant that we spent a lot of time in Iddlebiddy Cave. And one of the things that we started to notice from Will's photogrammetry is where the holes are, where the camera didn't capture the side of a wall, which meant back near the start, back near the entrance, I found a hole. As a result of Will's photogrammetry, we looked at it and we scanned this particular area and I went, there's something there. There's some chimney going on here. And as it turned out, there's the main tunnel, the blue that we've got there. There's a couple of side passages that are pretty hairy, marked there in orange. Down the end here, we've got the vent room, which has got line through it, but it's a little bit silty, a little bit messy. And this is just done on the MNemo, me surveying stuff. More interesting is the green stuff, where we managed to find a way through a rock pile, a collapse. What we didn't realise was a collapse. Found an enormous air pocket in there, quite a large air chamber, that led off to some really hairy cave. Arguably the scariest stuff that I've experienced here in Mt Gambier would be down the bottom of this curve. Very, very low, very, very silty. Definitely wetsuit and sevens type territory. It's pretty scary stuff, to be honest with you. My survey does one job. Will's photogrammetry does something else altogether. You actually start to get a sense of the shape. This is an early photogrammetry model that Will did. He then went on, mouse has stopped working, and refined it. So as I said, the main tunnel that we've got running through there, base one, which is, I don't know if folks can see it, but the New Hope extension was reasonably well known, but we found a way through it up into this big surface lake that's up there. And then it starts to get really nasty down here. The thermal exhaust, so we've themed, if you haven't guessed, we've themed all of this around Star Wars because we're massive nerds. But the thermal exhaust duct is almost a vertical 3-metre drop through quite a nasty crevice to then get into some very, very low silty cave. So, and there's not much that opens up through any of it except for Star Destroyer, which is this thing here, almost connecting back to Surface Lake. That room would be on the order of about 8 to 9 metres tall, and it's soft. So as soon as you go in there, I originally, before we themed it around Star Wars, I originally called it the ballroom, because as soon as you exhaled, your bubbles would hit the roof and it would start snowing in there, which is definitely troubling when you're in there. We still think there's stuff to push in Iddlebiddy. We're still optimistic that there's things to go further. There's a couple of other surface features nearby that we're thinking may potentially connect. There's more work to do in Iddlebiddy. But once again, like the ADD kids we are, we got distracted. I said making our way through the rock pile. This thing was originally called the spine bender. We've now read wars. I just want to point out this little bend that we've got through there, between the edge of the rock there and the furthest point there. Your 7-litre cylinders are 74 centimetres long. So when we talk about a big spine bender, that's what we were having to do. I'm the smallest person on the team, which means I could wiggle through first. Martin Slater took 3 or 4 goes before he got, because his spine is literally centimetres longer than mine is, and so he couldn't get through initially. Gets through without any issues now. Again, quite soft limestone, so as people have gone through, it's worn away. But this was particularly nasty initially. But it was worth it to pop out on the other side into this amazing surface lake area. So we got distracted by pines. And for folks who may have been following social media for the last week or so, you may have already guessed this. But Will had moved on from the photogrammetry. I still wanted to push Iddlebiddy. I still wanted to do stuff in there. But Will was looking for his next photogrammetry challenge. And he found it in pines. So we did a bunch of support dives with Will, so he could collect all the data. Pines, for folks who haven't experienced it, it's quite a complicated dive. It's almost shaped like an onion. There's multiple layers in it. And you can think you're going down, there's different layers that are separated out as well. It's quite complicated. That's, say, 4 wombats hanging out at Pines Cave. But surveying pines was really hard as well. My first go at survey with the MNemo tool sucked, to be honest with you. It was pretty awful. I had another go about 2 years later after I surveyed tank, that surveyed a bunch of different places and produced a much more accurate map. So for folks who aren't sort of aware, we've got the cavern zone here. There's these multiple layers. We've got the down to the dark room, the surprise tunnel running through there. Sorry, surprise tunnel starts there, up into crazy check room, which is under the road, which is that little section that you can see running underneath there. There's always been discussions ever since the crazy check room was discovered in the early 2000s about a potential connection to Stinging Nettle Cave, or Nettle Cave as it's referred to. I've surveyed Nettle Cave. It goes the wrong way. It goes northwest, unfortunately, so it's not like it's going to come back towards and connect. But there's always been this discussion of these 2 caves being very, very close to each other. Can we find a connection? Will went through, produced an extraordinary map of pines using photogrammetry that sort of demonstrates a lot of really interesting things. And when we looked at this map, we started to pick up very quickly there were things that we'd missed. So a classic one is, as you head down towards the dark room actually has someone out on a Saturday night. The dark room actually is very close to connecting back to the air peak chamber on the other side. The director's tomb we thought was a dead end. Turns out that it actually connects back out to the surprise tunnel. One of the other things that had been discussed for a long time was the idea that there'd be some sort of lead coming off the crazy check room. And so people got very excited about that. We did this, and to be honest with you, I'll show you again for folks who haven't seen the crazy check room. It's this enormous room, quite high. It gets up to about 4 meters at the roof. The bottom, down the bottom, sort of here, the bottom of this rock pile is about 14 meters, and down at the bottom, back in the silt line, is about 28, 29 meters. So it's quite a tall room. This is me on one side of it and Will photographing back. Will's sort of sitting at the end of the line, and the line's actually running underneath me. But that photo is maybe a little bit better. It doesn't show you the size of the room, but you can see once again the line. So this is Dave Page, who a really good friend of ours. Again, another guy who was on the basic cave course with us when we went through. Me when I was still on a rebreather, and Will getting an amazing shot. And that is the current end of the line in Pines until 2 months ago. For a long time, that was the end of the line. We went back to this map and kept looking at it, and one of the things we noticed was there was a potential lead that everyone had been excited about. Where you saw Dave just before there, down behind Dave's left shoulder is a dark area where it drops down, it gets back into some clay, and a lot of folks have been poking around down there trying to find a way on. We scanned it, and we could tell from the imagery that it was almost exactly the same kind of rock as what you see at the end of Bunyip's Den. Now, Bunyip's Den was not going anywhere. There's been a massive collapse at the end there, and it's almost like a wall of rock. You know there's nothing there. So if we're getting the same kind of rock in that same area, it kind of put us off. The other thing that we looked at is shadows. So we've got the same colour here at the end of Bunyip's Den and down in that little lead. But what we started to notice was there's areas that the camera didn't pick up. It never saw a wall. It was trying to take photos. It's trying to produce this model. There was never a point in this particular area where it ever actually saw the wall. And the biggest one we got excited about was on the other side of the crazy check room on the right-hand side there. So about 6 months ago, I decided to go and have a look at it and found some water flow through it. And one of our golden rules is if there's flow, that's the lead, that's the way to go. You're either going with the flow or you're pushing into it. This was very much a case of pushing into it. So down on that, it's a very small, very silty little room. And what the camera wasn't picking up was that small, silty room. Squeezed down into it, pushed one side, again, try and check every wall. Turns out there's a crevice back there with more water flowing out of it. I'm not going to lie, this is tight. We've been through it quite a bit, so it has got less tight. Originally, I was doing this in a wetsuit and sevens and using a couple of Ali-80 cylinders to get to the crazy check room, and then jumping on the sevens, which was scary. But that was the way to get through it. So you get through, that's what we're now referring to as the Gaddy Gap. Once you're through the Gaddy Gap, you then get into, I'm hoping this is the right video, at the back of the CCR that's leaning up on the north side of the wall. We've found a way into that. Once you get through the Gaddy Gap, you've got to basically navigate through all of these different rocks to get down. And we need to get down about 3 meters from where the Gaddy Gap is down to another restriction. And that next restriction it's going to play, yep. That next restriction is one that we call Beaver Hole. Too dirty with it. The original name was along the lines that, like, I had found this thing and I basically scratched at it to try and find a way. And Corey, the first time he saw it, he said it looks like a pink beaver has attacked it because I moved all the sills and scratched everything around to try and find a way through. This is phreatic tunnel. So we've now popped out of the rock pile and we've now found ourselves in tunnel that has never been exposed to light. There's been water flowing through, so we know now that we're well and truly into fresh tunnel. So naturally, the next thing that I did was surveyed it. Now, I'll point out at this point, the MNemo does not work inside this light blue area. This is the rock pile that we're talking about. The MNemo really suits long distances. When you are measuring a couple of meters here and then changing direction, measuring another couple of meters and twisting and turning, all that sort of stuff, you've got to go back to an old school survey slate and a pair of pegs that are between 1 meter length of line, and you measure out each meter and take headings manually and record it on the survey slate. I used the MNemo on a much larger tunnel, the actual Crazy Wombat tunnel itself, which we'll get to in a minute. But getting through that rock pile meant going back to the basics, the old school survey techniques, rather than trying to use technology. So again, use the tools that suit, know what your tools are capable of, and know that, hey, if maybe we don't use the whiz-bang electronics, we go back to a piece of PVC and slate a compass glued to it in order to find something and survey it. So essentially, there's 100 meters of extra tunnel coming out the top of the crazy check room. I am very bad at paint, in case you can't tell, but we tried to give a rough sense I pointed out Dave Page before. So we knew we were onto something about 6 months ago, and we're getting very excited about it. We were all looking forward to having Dave come back. Dave passed away around just after Christmas, and Dave was Will's first friend in Australia. When Will moved from Brazil out to Australia, Dave was his first mate. He's always been hugely important to us as a team. We haven't always seen that much of him, but he passed away just after Christmas. And so we were onto this new exciting thing, and Will and I discussed it, and we're like, we've got to name part of this cave after Dave. So we've got the Pagey Pocket in here. It is a very weird, little complicated piece of cave. It's not a part of the cave that most divers are going to go to. You now have to jump to get to the line that is there, and it's only a very short little loop. But we used Dave's line. So we had one of Dave's reels. We laid with Dave's reel, and we've left a couple of Dave's cookies at the end of it. And yeah, we really want folks who do go and explore this and go and dive it to kind of leave that section alone. It's very much in memory of Dave. It's pretty important. So yeah, we've left a couple of cookies at the end there. So one thing I will say about this is it's orange line all the way through. And if you find white line, you've either found exploration stuff, because Corey and I are pushing something else that's in there, or you found the Pagey Pocket. So we're strongly encouraging people to stay on the orange line and kept it color-coded that way. So orange line's nice and consistent, it's strong. White line starts getting a little bit more shaky. So we've also updated the map. So again, I went through, did a survey. Weirdly enough, the beaver hole is almost exactly 10 meters directly below the end of the line in CCR. We've had to go 50 meters around, so we've gone out through the rock hole and made our way 10 meters down to then pop out. But it's almost directly underneath where the line is, just 10 meters lower. So everything that you see in the Crazy Check Room has all come off the roof, and it's blocked this massive gaping tunnel that is now buried under rocks that we've managed to find a way through to. So, and naturally, the next step after the survey was to get Will in there with the photogrammetry rig and start getting an initial. Now, I will say this is very, very new. So we haven't had a chance to even generate. I literally went with Corey this morning to go and get the last bits of data that Will is going to use to produce the full model for this. So I apologise if this isn't fully up to speed yet, but this is all very, very new stuff. Interesting and rather exciting. And this is a profile view. So we've got the Crazy Check Room up the top there, that 10-meter drop down, and then you can see the Crazy Wombat tunnel running out of the Crazy Check Room there as well. So we're very close to Sing Nettle. Now, Corey and I, at the risk of stepping outside the cone of silence inside the team, Corey and I have different opinions on where this tunnel's going to keep going. We've kind of hit a bit of a rock pile, but we know that there's water flowing through that rock pile, and we're currently disagreeing on how to get around it. I'll give you the cliff notes on it, but the short version is I originally was trying to find a way around the right-hand side, gave up. Corey found something very interesting on the left-hand side. I got very excited about what he found. You've kind of cooled on the left-hand side a little bit now, and now you're excited about two other things that you found on the right-hand side that I missed. So it's, again, it all comes back to multiple eyes. It's not about any one person being the explorer or anything like that. We try and get as many people in there as we possibly can because people see this stuff from different perspectives. And you pointed something out to me 2 days ago that I looked at and went, how the hell did I miss that? But I just didn't see it. Same as that rock in Engelbrecht. Just sometimes takes looking at things from a slightly different perspective to find stuff. So I reckon Corey's going to find a connection to the south side of the Stinging Nettle Doling. The dive is off the north side, but we reckon we're going to find something that will lead up to the south side. I'm very excited because the left-hand side points straight to Tank Cave, 2 kilometres away. So I might be getting very aspirational, a bit like Engelbrecht's, where we're going to connect Engelbrecht's east to Cave Gardens, but we're on the same kind of track with this sort of stuff. So, dived Pines and been to the Crazy Check Room, you may be familiar with our friend the gnome. We don't know where the gnome came from. Someone put the gnome in there a very long time ago. But we now have a new gnome home at the end of the line. So the very we hope the owner doesn't mind, but we've moved the gnome up to the very end of the line. Nice little home there, nice little spot. Set him up with. If someone gets angry, they can always come and talk to us. But we're hopeful that the gnome has found a new home, and when we find potentially more tunnel, the gnome will migrate, and the gnome's going to live at the end of the line. We'll see. Trying to get further and further away from humanity. So, and there he is, tucked away at the end of the line. So, I didn't realise they've got a stem on the end of it. Like, it was quite awkward to try. Anyway, whatever. The gnome has found a home. Cool. I managed to wrap that up faster than I thought. So we've still got about 8 minutes on the live stream. I'll just check if we've got any. So, folks, if you are there on the live stream and you've got questions, fire away, and I'll try and check them. But does anyone have any questions in here? Or
coming up into gas pockets in East Extension?
Yep.
Were you concerned or thinking about what the gas in there is?
So I'll repeat that for live stream as well. So concerns around surfacing in Engelbrecht's east and the potential toxicity of the gas. We had a pretty good sense that air chamber was clean. That big air chamber was clean. We did check it. So when I first surfaced in it, we did check it. There's I don't know who came up with it, but it's sipping the air. So you kind of like, you keep the reg in your mouth. There's some sites out on the road plains where if you surface, you can immediately feel it burning your skin, like straight away. And there's warning signs saying, don't breathe it, blah, blah, like you can feel it. I surfaced in there. We'd also just come out of clean air. We'd only gone a few meters and gone back up. So we're like, there's a really good chance that this is fine. Tested it, turned out it was fine. We now know that the fissures and the cracks in the rock around that area actually means that air filters backwards and forwards from the surface. So there's quite a lot of stuff that gets washed down from above. So yeah, it turned out that the air was fine, but it is a concern. It's something you watch out for, and especially out on the road plains. It's the hypersaline water and the tree roots dissolving, creating these awful gases, the hydrogen sulfide and that sort of stuff. So you don't want to breathe it. But yeah, it was a concern, but it was a concern we got over very quickly because we'd just been breathing clean air in the previous chamber. So anyone else? Hang on there. Pete, are you exploring further extensions in tank? That would be telling, Pete. Truth be told, I haven't been in tank in a long time. There's lots of people who are actively exploring stuff in tank, and that's awesome. I know Ryan Kashkorski is regularly in there trying to hunt around for the next big find. There's all sorts of stuff going on. I have stepped away from tank, mostly because there's other interesting stuff around. There's other caves. Everyone's diving tank. Everyone rushes to get their advanced cave done so they can go and dive tank and do their group dives and all that sort of thing. I got very excited about Engelbrecht because it was something that we found after half a dozen cave dives. So I've always had this attitude of there's lots of other sites that don't get as much attention and try and focus on those. So there's definitely stuff in tank, there's no doubt. And I'm hopeful that someone like Ryan or someone else goes and pushes from the tank end. Ryan is aware of this new extension in Pines, and we've already joked about, we'll be able to meet up and shake hands at some point. But no, personally, and I don't, Corey, do you know of any of the Wombats doing anything in? No, I think Martin was doing a lot of stuff with helping other divers, like getting them through their group dives there for a while. He put out that amazing booklet. That's the map for tank as well. But I don't think it's the focus. We're more interested in. Will's been very much focused on the photogrammetry. The one thing I'll say, and one thing that Will and I have talked about with Tank Cave, is Will's photogrammetry uses a ridiculous amount of data. It's huge. but it's super, super accurate. The game changer recently for us, and I don't know if folks can see it, but that's a Insta360 X4. You buy one for less than $1,000, and where I'm now moving into the photogrammetry phase. My photogrammetry is 1/10 as accurate or as detailed as Will's, but I can get the shape of the cave. I can get some details. When we scanned pines, Will's scan can literally see scratches on the stop sign in pines. Mine, you can barely read that it says stop, but I can see the shape of the cave. And I can still see these gaps. I can still see the things that Will is pointing out. So what we're now talking about is potentially use an Insta360 to swim through some of the tunnels in tank and get the shape, get the general gist of where the cave's going. And then for interesting areas, bring the Will's photogrammetry rig in to do high quality scans on Rocky Horror, the letterbox, other smaller areas that are super, super pretty and we want to get high resolution stuff on, not just big open tunnels. You're not going to go through and swim the high G numbers. You're not going to go and do G5 through to G10 with Will's photogrammetry rig, capturing it at about 100 megapixels or whatever it is. You go through it and you swim it with this and get it in low resolution because you just want the shape of the cave. So, anyone else here? Otherwise, I've got more questions on the YouTube.
Turn the light.
If we can turn the light on, so it's getting a little bit dark.
One moment,
then-
everyone.
You're about to be blinded.
React.
That's much better. There we go. Perfect. Now I can actually see it. Does anyone else have any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Barry?
Is it worthwhile going to Single Needle?
Yep.
Because obviously not very far away from it. Is there something there that's...
So I'll repeat that for everyone online as well. Is it worth going back to Stinging Needle and poking around? We've done that. We've had a bit of a look. I am not optimistic, and I'm always happy to be proven wrong on all this stuff, but I'm not optimistic that we're going to find a way from the water on the north side around to the south side. There is a hole on the south side, and it looks like someone's been pulling stuff out of there, like something's been going on there. Not sure what the story is. It gets down reasonably deep, but it also then fishes out. So it looks like it might just be a drain, there might be something going on, but we strongly suspect that the stuff that we're looking at is the off-run. So like water running into that Dolene is then feeding in and trickling down to where we are. So like I said, we're within 15 metres of the south side of that Dolene. We don't know. If someone's going to find it, I reckon it'll probably be Corey. Especially that thing that you've looked at today and yesterday. There's a fracture that's going straight at it. There's a rock pile that we're looking at the end, the far end, that isn't going anywhere. I initially thought that's going to be the way. It's going to go straight to it. It's a little bit off, and it's just white walls. It's all just blacked out. There's no way on from the top of that rock pile. What Corey's looking at the moment is something much more exciting that stays at the same depth, and we're hopeful that there's water flowing through it, and we want to know where that water's flowing to. So, but we'll see. That's been the dream, connecting these caves for a long time. Peter Horn, I know the Crazy Checks, other folks who were involved in the Crazy Check room kind of being opened up in the first place, they were all talking about the connection to Stinging Needle. We've just made it 70 metres closer. So yeah, we're still 15 metres away. We're under the road at this point, which is a concern because you tend to find a lot of these caves, if there's a road over the top, you'll get collapses or block it off. We're under the road and we're in a rock pile. But if we can find a way around that rock pile, maybe there's a way up. Who knows? But I'm not that interested in that. I'm more keen to follow where the flow is coming in. The flow's not coming in from that direction, and there's no flow in Stinging Needle. I'm much more interested in following to the northwest, which again, maybe overly optimistic, but that's the way to take. So we'll see. Anyone else on here? Further extensions, might have missed it. What's the current depth? Oh, I didn't actually. Paul Daniels is asking here. Might have missed it. What is the current depth you're at now at the end of the Pines line? So we're back up at 14 metres. I say 14, 15 meters. I haven't included a photo of the profile. The profile is aggressive. So for folks who've dived the CCR, you're basically doing a U-shaped profile to get there in the first place, down to 34 meters, back up to 14 meters. We're then going back down to 34 meters, following along at depth at like 27, 28 meters, and it slowly angles up to 24, nose dives again, and then angles back up to that 14, 15 meter mark at the end of the line. So the end of the line is I want to say 15 meters, and we're 15 meters away from stinging nettle. So that's exciting. But yeah, it is a roller coaster. What I think we were talking about it being to the CCR is U-shaped. This is W, and then you're doing that back in reverse to get back out again. So it is a very big dive. We're certainly not encouraging folks to rush out and do it. Those restrictions are obviously very tight. The Gaddy Gap, the first one that I was showing you there, I'm squeezing through that at 26 meters into a rock pile. So if you get stuck, you're at 26 meters, 200 plus meters back into a cave. So use that information as you will, but yeah, there's a certain level of confidence required to get through some of this stuff. So yeah, we got one from, very exciting. Have you dived from the stinging nettle side to make the connection to new pines? So as I don't know if we talked about that a little bit earlier on, but we've looked. I can't find a way. None of us seem to be able to find a way around the stinging nettle doling. There is that dry hole, but there's no way to find a way around yet. Someone else might find it. I can't stand stinging nettle as a dive, so I avoid it at all costs. But maybe someone else jumps in there and they find a way around that we haven't been able to find. Don't know. So, anyone? Actually, before I go any more,
How are you measuring the flow?
How are we measuring the flow? I'm going to wrap this up in a minute as well. We'll try and finish this up. We're not measuring it. We're seeing it. So it's very much qualitative. It's not quantitative. It's not like we're down to flow meters or anything like that. It's very much disturb the rock, and through experience, disturb rock, and it hangs there, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't hang there, you go, how did that clear? Why is that cleared? Disturb it again, a little bit of silt, and it clears again. That Gaddy Gap, we were literally squeezing in, trying to find like just the right keyhole to get through, backing out, calming yourself back down again, and be like, okay, how am I going to get through this? Sort out your line, sort out a few bits and pieces, look up, and it's clear again in front of you. That was the sign to us that, hey, there's flow, and it's coming straight towards us. The beat of the hole was a similar sort of story, not quite as strong. There's more gaps in the rock nearby. So any flow that is coming out of what we're calling the void, the area down at 34 meters that's coming up, there's more ways for that to filter around, so it's not as flow. But the Gaddy Gap has been pushed through that quite quickly, and you can tell that because you disturb the rock and it just clears in front of you. There's a photo that I took when I first found it, where I've just written on my slate. I've got a wrist slate. It's just got big lead, massive flow. Like that was all, and I just like was sitting on deco going like, so it's not measuring it; it's just witnessing it. One game changer. This is just a little small note. Diving with a helmet is sometimes controversial. One thing I will say is diving with a light on your helmet and turning all your other lights off and just having that there, it will often, because it's offset and you're not looking at it directly, it will actually show you if there's more silt movement. I don't know why, I don't know what the physics behind it is, but using a headlamp and turning all the other lights off will sometimes illuminate the silt enough that you can actually see it moving. It's only small. We're not talking like Florida flow here at all. We're talking about like noticing that silt clouds move in particular directions or that it clears. The void, I'm going to get carried away here. The void is a really interesting one because we know there's flow running along the roof, but not on the bottom. And so it's almost swampy. The reason why we call it the void is because it's like the silt never settles there. It just kind of sits in this murky cloud at the bottom, but it's crystal clear on the top. And that's how we know there's flow running along the roof. And that flow is not, it's maybe getting eddy currents that are disturbing the bottom, but it's not touching the bottom in any shape or form. Otherwise, you'd see, yeah, see clear. So we need a couple of questions here. Does anyone else have any more questions here? There's a couple left on here. Locking, troublemaker Lockie. Now the caves in the mount that are of interest with leads if you get bored with pines. Yes, and again, that would be telling. Cave DB is into Cave DB. There are different levels of security, so not everyone can see everything in Cave DB. Pieces, they can share bits and pieces. Again, the team, as a rule, data transparent. That said, we don't necessarily share the latest thing because we're looking at it, and our goal is share it as soon as it's safe. If we're doing something that maybe is pushing the limits, we want to set things up so that if it did get announced, at least go in there. Someone who's just finished AC could potentially work their way up to going and exploring something like that. So try and make the line as safe as possible. We had one recently where, yeah, he's going to run out. Where
I get through that, all you guys.
I was about to say, he's in there. But we had an interesting one with Darren when you dived it. We put a junction in to the Pagey pocket, and exiting, it was a little bit silty, a little bit messed up in there. It's orange line, and the orange line does a hard left-hand turn, and the white line leading into the Pagey pocket comes straight off that. So if you're not necessarily paying attention, you just look ahead and go line, it would lead you straight in. So we've modified the line now so that someone can't do that. There's big arrows there, so when you get to that turn, you go turn left, and you really have to hunt to find the white line for the Pagey pocket. So it's this whole thing of multiple eyes, multiple people getting in there, and learning from things like that, how do we make it safer? Sorry? So the beaver hole, so actually that's one thing I'll add as well. We added a little bit of secondary line just in front of the beaver hole, because the first time Corey came out of it, I put the line through, but the line goes through the top to keep the beaver hole clear. It kind of goes up over your shoulder. It's a bit complicated, and you can't actually hang on to the line and go through it if it's a little bit silty. He came out and didn't know where the line was. The line's gone up behind him. It's the best place we could do it, but he didn't know which way to go. So you kind of drifted off a little bit. You couldn't have gotten far, like it's a dead end in there. And you would have found it, but it was a bit spooky, being like, where the hell was the line? So we put a second line in so that when you come out through the beaver hole, there's a white line right in front of you. There's a dirty great big arrow pointing out. That's the way. That line doesn't go anywhere any further. It just leads back up, and a couple of meters back up the top there, it links back in. So if you lose everything, you can see that arrow, and it's right there. If someone accidentally follows it on the way down, they're going to wind up in exactly the same spot. It's all in the same area. It's just this secondary line because there's no way for us to lay the line so that someone can hang on to it all the way through. We needed this second piece of line just as a safety reference. So that's been the whole goal for us. We can share stuff once we know that people aren't going to make scary mistakes 250 plus meters into a cave, into a fairly edgy cave. So yeah, it's all about making stuff safe. In answer to your question, Lachlan, yes, there's other stuff we're pushing. There's other things that we're interested in. We kind of dropped everything because Pines was the one that had the most promise. And OzTech obviously factors into this as well. Being able to share something that is exciting in the timescale that we had. It was kind of a decision to drop the other stuff that we were kind of poking around, having a bit of a look at, and really focus on something that we thought was exciting. So one last question from here. Are you sharing? Oh no, that's just someone being very delightful and nice. Cool. I'm happy to share. This is the cool thing. We get to share this stuff with people. It's really exciting. Rather than keeping it quiet, which much rather do the things, find the new stuff, make it safe, and then share it with people. So if I know there's food ready. Food is ready. 2 minutes.
No,
it's ready. It's ready now.
Okay. Sweat. And it's coming.
Any last questions? Otherwise, food. Cool. Thank you very much, folks. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. And hopefully we can do more broadcasts, more masterclasses and stuff like that. So awesome. Thanks again, folks. And I'll stop the stream.
I'm working on it.